The lease is terminated as of the 1st of next month, my stepmother Margaret announced, sliding legal documents across her mahogany dining table with the satisfied smile of someone finally winning a war she'd been waging for years. As executor of your father's estate, I have a fiduciary duty to cut losses. Your little cake shop has been bleeding money since the day you opened it. I stared at the termination notice, the death sentence for the business I'd built from nothing, operating out of a commercial space my father had purchased specifically to support my dream. While Margaret's biological children, my step-siblings, watched from the doorway with barely concealed glee. What Margaret didn't know, what she'd never bothered to discover in her rush to destroy me, was that my little cake shop wasn't a struggling retail bakery at all. I was the largest luxury wedding cake supplier in 3 states. The retail storefront was just the visible tip of an iceberg she'd never looked beneath. "You can't do this," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the panic rising in my chest. "I can and I have. The property belongs to your father's estate. As executor, I have full authority over estate assets. And this asset has been underperforming for far too long. The property was meant to be mine. Dad promised. Your father made a lot of promises before he died. Unfortunately, he didn't put most of them in writing." Margaret's smile sharpened. "The will gives me discretion over estate management until probate is complete. I'm exercising that discretion. This is my livelihood. My employees should have chosen a more stable employer. You have 30 days to vacate. I've already contacted a commercial realtor to assess the property for new tenants. Someone who can actually generate return on investment." I stood, gathering the termination papers with hands that trembled with rage, not fear. "You'll regret this, Margaret." "I doubt it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a dinner reservation." The commercial realtor arrived at my bakery 3 days later. His name was David Hollister, and he worked for one of the most prestigious commercial real estate firms in the region. He'd been engaged by Margaret to assess the property's value and find a suitable replacement tenant. He clearly expected to find a struggling small business, outdated equipment, amateur operations, the sad remnants of a daughter's failed dream. What he found instead made him stop in the doorway of my production facility, his mouth slightly open. "This is not what I was told to expect." "What were you told?" "A small retail bakery. Underperforming. Minimal equipment." He walked slowly through the space, taking in the commercial ovens, the industrial mixers, the climate-controlled storage rooms, the packaging stations. "This is a full-scale production facility." "Yes, it is." "May I see your books? I need to assess the business value as part of the property evaluation." I handed him the financial records I'd prepared. Not the simplified retail numbers Margaret had seen, but the complete picture of Sweet Serenity Bakery's operations. He sat down at my office desk and began reading. After 20 minutes, he looked up at me with an expression of profound confusion. "According to these figures, your retail storefront generates approximately $8,000 per month in revenue." "Correct. But your wholesale division generates over $180,000 per month." "Also correct. You supply wedding cakes too." He flipped through the client list. "The Ritz-Carlton, the Four Seasons, the Waldorf, every luxury hotel chain in a 300-mile radius. We have exclusive contracts with 12 five-star properties, plus another 28 high-end venues, 3 celebrity event planners, and a waiting list that's currently 8 months long. Your annual revenue is over $2.2 million. $2.4 million projected for this year. We've been growing approximately 15% annually." David set down the financial documents and stared at me. "Why would anyone cancel this lease?" "Because my stepmother has never asked about my business. She's never visited the production facility. She saw the retail storefront numbers, which are intentionally modest since retail isn't our focus, and assumed the entire operation was failing. She didn't request complete financial records. She requested a summary of the bakery's performance. I sent her retail figures. She never asked for more. And now she's terminated your lease based on incomplete information. She's been trying to push me out of my father's life and his estate since the day they married. This was just the excuse she needed." David was quiet for a long moment. "Ms. Ashford, I'm going to be honest with you. I was hired by Mrs. Ashford to assess this property for releasing. But what I've found here changes the situation considerably." "How so?" "If your stepmother has terminated a lease on a property generating this level of business activity, she may have violated her fiduciary duty as estate executor. She made a decision that could cost the estate significant income without conducting proper due diligence. What does that mean practically? It means you should contact a probate attorney immediately. And it means I need to make a phone call. The call David made wasn't to Margaret. It was to his senior partner, who specialized in commercial disputes involving estate properties. Within a week, I had legal representation, attorneys who looked at my situation and saw not just a family dispute, but a clear case of executor misconduct. Margaret Ashford had a duty to make decisions that benefit the estate and its beneficiaries, my attorney explained. By canceling a lease on a property generating substantial rental value, your business pays below market rent, which benefits you as a beneficiary, but the property itself is incredibly valuable because of the successful business operating within it. She's potentially breached that duty. What can we do? We can petition the probate court to review her decisions as executor. We can request an accounting of all her management decisions. And we can ask for her removal if we demonstrate a pattern of self-dealing or negligence. What does self-dealing look like? If she canceled your lease to benefit herself or her own children at the expense of other beneficiaries, that's self-dealing. If she failed to investigate the true value of your business before making a decision that harms you, that's negligence. How do we prove intent? We start by looking at what she knew and when she knew it. And we look at who benefits from your removal. The investigation revealed a pattern I'd suspected, but never confirmed. Margaret had been systematically undervaluing assets I was associated with while protecting assets that benefited her own children. The bakery property was just the most blatant example. My father's estate included several commercial properties, investment accounts, and a substantial portfolio of stocks. As executor, Margaret had discretion over how these assets were managed until probate was complete and distribution occurred. She'd been using that discretion strategically. Properties I had interest in were being assessed at below market values. Properties her children would inherit were being appraised at premium rates. She declined to rent out a warehouse that I could have used for business expansion while simultaneously improving a retail space that her daughter planned to use for a boutique. This is textbook breach of fiduciary duty, my attorney said, reviewing the documentation. She's been treating the estate as her personal piggy bank, making decisions based on who benefits rather than what's best for the estate as a whole. Can we stop the lease termination? We can file for an emergency stay. Given the revenue your business generates and the value it adds to the property, we have strong grounds to argue that termination would cause irreparable harm to the estate. The court hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks after we filed. Margaret arrived with her own attorneys, expensive ones, paid for with estate funds. She walked into the courtroom with the confidence of someone who'd always gotten her way through sheer force of will. That confidence faltered when she saw the evidence we'd compiled. Your Honor, my attorney began, we're asking for an emergency stay of the lease termination issued by Mrs. Ashford as estate executor. We contend that this termination was issued without proper investigation of the business operating on the property, and that it constitutes a breach of Mrs. Ashford's fiduciary duty. What evidence supports this claim? Ms. Ashford's bakery is not a failing retail operation. It's a $2.4 million annual revenue wholesale business, supplying luxury wedding cakes to major hotel chains across 3 states. Mrs. Ashford terminated the lease based solely on retail storefront numbers, without ever requesting complete financial records or visiting the production facility. The judge turned to Margaret. Mrs. Ashford, did you investigate the full scope of the business before issuing the termination? Margaret's attorney answered. My client reviewed the financial summary provided by the beneficiary. I asked Mrs. Ashford directly. Margaret straightened. I reviewed the numbers that were given to me. If additional information existed, it should have been provided. Did you ask for additional information? I didn't think it was necessary. The retail operation was clearly struggling. The retail operation represents less than 5% of the business revenue, my attorney interrupted. A basic inquiry would have revealed this. The failure to conduct due diligence before making a decision that could cost the estate over $2 million annually is precisely the kind of negligence that constitutes breach of fiduciary duty. The judge's ruling came 3 days later. The lease termination was stayed pending a full review of Margaret's actions as executor. Furthermore, the court appointed an independent administrator to evaluate all of Margaret's decisions since assuming the role. The independent review took 4 months. What it revealed was damning. Margaret had systematically favored her own children in every decision she'd made. She'd undervalued my share of the estate by over $400,000 while inflating her children's shares by similar amounts. She'd used estate funds to improve properties they would inherit while neglecting properties in my portion. And she'd attempted to terminate my lease specifically because a successful business on that property would increase its value that would ultimately benefit me. She was trying to destroy your business, so the property would be worth less when you inherited it, my attorney explained. That way, when the estate was finally distributed, your share would be minimized while her children's shares remained intact. Can she be removed as executor? She's being removed as we speak. The court has found multiple breaches of fiduciary duty. She's also being required to repay the estate for the funds she misappropriated, attorney's fees, property improvements for her children's benefit, the entire pattern of self-dealing. What happens to the bakery? The lease is reinstated. In fact, given the business value, the new administrator is suggesting the estate transfer the property to you directly as part of your inheritance. It simplifies management and ensures the business can continue operating. Margaret didn't go quietly. She appealed the court's decision, claimed I had manipulated the financial records, accused me of hiding information to sabotage her administration. None of it worked. The evidence was too clear, the pattern too consistent. 6 months after she'd tried to cancel my lease, Margaret was removed as executor, ordered to repay over $300,000 to the estate, and barred from any further involvement in estate management. Her children, my step-siblings, stopped speaking to me entirely. I was fine with that. They'd watched Margaret's campaign against me for years and never said a word. The property was transferred to me as part of my inheritance, as recommended. I now own the building where Sweet Serenity Bakery operates, the building my father had purchased to support my dream, the dream Margaret had tried to destroy. Last month, I celebrated our best quarter ever. $680,000 in revenue. Contracts with 3 new luxury hotel chains. A feature in Bridal magazine calling us the gold standard of wedding cakes. I hung the article on the wall of my production facility, the facility Margaret had never bothered to visit, in the business she'd dismissed as a little cake shop. The commercial realtor, David, sent me a congratulatory note. We've stayed in touch since the case ended. He's become a friend, someone who saw the truth when others couldn't be bothered to look. I still remember walking into your facility, he wrote, expecting a failing retail bakery and finding a $2 million operation. The look on your stepmother's face when those numbers came out in court was something I'll never forget. Neither will I. Margaret had called my bakery failing. She'd terminated my lease without a second thought. She'd been so certain of my worthlessness that she'd never bothered to investigate. Her certainty was her downfall. My father believed in me. He bought that property to help me succeed. Margaret tried to undo his gift, to erase his faith in me, to push me out of the family she'd wanted for herself. But she forgot to check what I'd actually built. She forgot to look beyond the surface. And when the truth finally emerged, it destroyed her. The little cake shop is thriving. The stepmother who tried to kill it is paying restitution. And somewhere, I like to think my father is smiling.